May the words of my lips and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Early on in relationships, we learn interesting things about each other. I'm actually kind of sorry that my husband, Bill, isn't here today. I don't know that I actually have ever used an example from our marriage in a sermon before, but this one was a little too good to pass up. When we were first married and we were merging our belongings, Bill noticed something a little strange about me. I can be honest about this. The first time was when he was fiddling with my stereo. This was back when we had stereos, and it was a pretty nice stereo, I thought. And he suggested that maybe we should get a new one. And I snapped back and said, "Why? What's wrong with that one?" As a very smart husband, he backed up and was like, "Oh, nothing, honey, it's fine." A few weeks later, he suggested that perhaps my TV was a little too small. What? I said it's just fine. I think it was maybe a 14-inch TV. I thought, I'm not a TV watcher. I was just fine. Then it was the computer. And then it was the third-hand lawnmower I had worked hard to procure. And each time, he wasn't quite sure this item was doing what it was supposed to do and suggested it to me, I maybe kind of overreacted. And one day, this very patient husband of mine got up his courage and said, "You know, when I find a fault with one of your things, I'm not actually finding a fault with you. You know that, right?" Well, I didn't. And after a very nice, not at all heated conversation, I discovered that I was indeed identifying myself in my things, and I didn't even realize it. So when Bill criticized my TV or the stereo, I heard it as a personal attack because they were so mine. They were a part of me. I had worked hard to acquire them, except they weren't part of me. They were just things. So we can all hear that as a kind of funny example of a newly married couple, right? You can all laugh at that. It's like, those are other people. Yeah. And then that moment of realization hits when we recognize that maybe we've done something a little similar. That maybe we too have identified ourselves with our things, with our work, with our beautifully decorated home, our kids, our neighborhood, our title at work, the school our kids go to, where we work, our political beliefs, our church. And I'm not talking about pride here. One can take pride in something virtuous, good, or well done. I did some digging into this, and there's a leading authority on this very kind of strange thing called consumption and consumer behavior. His name is Russell Belk, and he calls it the identification of the extended self, when things that are truly not us become definitions of how we see ourselves. And notably for younger generations today, psychologists have discovered that it now extends to the digital realm, where kids today now see digital images as being representative of how they see themselves. So we know that this is definitely a human condition. And it is quite possible that the man in our gospel story today is experiencing this condition. We hear this story in 3 different books of the New Testament, and in each one, the man is a little different. In Mark today, he's known as wealthy. In Matthew, he's young, and in Luke, he's a ruler. This mirroring in multiple Gospels suggests that this story is likely to have actually occurred, and it's certainly memorable, particularly to our rather wealthy Western ears. Because in it, Jesus basically turns another cultural norm on its head. You see, in Jewish tradition, like many others, those who were seen as wealthy were also seen as blessed or good, virtuous even. If someone pleased God, then God blessed them with good things. If one was wealthy, it was a sign of favor from God. And so then what does Jesus say to this man? Well, he must go, sell what he owns, give the money to the poor, and come and follow Jesus. The man is shocked, goes away grieving, we are told. Curiously, we don't actually hear what he ends up doing, but we move right on to Jesus' zinger of a statement about how hard it is for the wealthy to enter heaven. Presumably because wealthy people can't give up all that they have. And so the disciples rightly ask, how then will anyone be saved? And isn't that a curious question? And here's why it's curious. The disciples themselves had already done just that. They know people will give up all they have to follow Jesus because they did. However, when we look at the professions of the 12, who were mostly fishermen, it stands to reason that they might not have had a great deal to walk away from. So why do they ask the question? It's as if they realize how hard it is for those who have much to give it up. It's a very human and very understandable thing. The more we have to lose. The more we have to lose, the more we fear losing it. The more we fear, the tighter we hold on to that which we have, and the more energy and action we spend on protecting it. And that energy and action slowly become who we are. So it is hard for those who have much to give it up, not because they don't want to intellectually follow Jesus, but because it is so hard to give up that which we believe defines us. And it's not so surprising, really, because at the root of it is fear. Who are we without the things we believe make us who we are? Well, that's just a downright uncomfortable question, and I don't really like it at all. Because at the end of the day, this gospel is not about money or wealth or identity. It is all about trust. Who are we without all that we think that we have or all that we think defines us? We are God's. We are nothing without God, and we are everything because of God. The beautiful thing here is that Jesus knows this. In the words of Paul's letter to the Hebrews today, and I hope you heard these beautiful words, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses. And in fact, we hear in our reading from Mark how Jesus regarded the wealthy man. It says, Jesus, looking at him, loved him. More than that, Jesus clearly knows that letting go of that which we think defines us is one of our greatest challenges, and says, for mortals, it is impossible, but not for God. For God, all things are possible. And so, there are two parts to the question that is before us as followers of Jesus. Can we trust God enough to loosen the chokehold we each have on the things we think define us? Because I'm pretty sure we all have that. And where is it Jesus is calling us to follow? What are we willing to give up to go where God is calling? It's worth noting that last sentence in our reading today, too. We all kind of get stuck on that giving up all your wealth part. But Jesus reminds us that in his new upside-down world, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first, that things are going to be very different. Those who give, receive, and those who receive, give, all in a beautiful circle of blessing and abundance, where there is no need to grasp on to an extended self in this world. The only identity we need, the only identity we need to own is an immortal one. And that one, my friends, is a beloved child of God. Amen.